Left-handed people, what in the world just doesn't work properly for you? Story 1, I didn't see anyone mention this one yet. Brooms where the stick screws into the brush part. The way I naturally grip a broom and sweep causes it to gradually unscrew itself until the brush part falls off. So I have to swap which hand is on top in my entire stance so my sweeping motion will constantly screw the stick and brush tighter together instead. It's easily manageable, but sometimes at the end of a long day of work, you're tired. Sweeping up and not thinking about having to do it opposite, the broom detaches. Story 2, I'll skip the ones I have already seen posted. The volume button position on most phones. Bread knives, secateurs, chainsaws, fanny packs aka bum bags. The zip goes in the wrong direction. 99% of items labeled ergonomic are only ergonomic if you're right-handed. Those chairs with the flip-up desk part attached to them. And so much more. We're one of the very few minority groups that society doesn't think needs accommodating. Story 3, I assume like myself that most lefties just adapt to things by being semi-ambidextrous. Scissors, can openers, PC mice that are on the right-hand side and which I have never bothered to switch. You can just train yourself to use a non-dominant hand until it becomes better at particular things. Story 4, the alphabet. Not writing itself, I just angle the paper so as not to smudge, but the letters themselves. The shape of them flows nicely when pulled smoothly across the page with a pen, but us lefties have to push the nib across the page. Try drawing a line, pulling a pen, and then pushing it to feel the difference in smoothness. Also mugs with logos on one side that are not visible when used in the left hand. Or cite sign-in books in narrow spaces in doorways with a pen on the wrong side. Oddly common. Rulers with the numbers on the wrong side. Story 5. Pens. They're made to be dragged along paper, not pushed, so a lot of pens just write like for us. That said, the day I learned intubation and found out that a laryngoscope blade is meant to be held in the left hand, I rejoiced. Suck it, righties. I win this one. Story 6. Most multi-tools, the easy one-handed knife opening is for righties. Many EDC knives don't allow switching the pocket clips, and same for knife sheaths. I have 5 pairs of left-handed scissors for a reason. When I used a left-handed can opener, it made me cry. I had no idea how easy it was. I'm sure there are a ton of other ones, but I can't think of them or don't even realize I'm struggling. There's a reason left-handed people don't live as long. We aren't meant for this world. Edited for clarification and grammar. Story 7. Learning guitar, I play a right-handed guitar flipped the other way so the strings are backwards, but to me it's normal. Also 3 ring binders, and writing anything because you immediately smudge it. So it's extra fun when it needs to be nice, like on a greeting card. Cake knife server things, the serrated edge is on the other side. Story 8. I'm not ambidextrous by any means, but for some reason I'm able to use a lot of right-handed things. It's great for computers as I can use a mouse right-handed and make notes with my left. The only things I have to do left-handed is write or paint. Even DIY. Can't get brush to sit right in my hand. Scissors, tin openers, cutlery all fine, but likely because my parents are right-handed and never said anything out differently. Story 9. Niche 1, but petrol leaf blowers. The intake is on the right side of all of them, so if you hold it with your left, it sucks your pants in. It's the same with drills. To put them into reverse, most have a button you push from left to right, and to drill into things you push it right to left. So if you're drilling into things and have to apply some force with your right hand, you push into that button. But if you do the same thing with your left hand, you have to hold the drill differently because you can easily put it into reverse unintentionally when trying to use force. Story 10. Emergency stops on large industrial equipment. Most of these are placed so that if there is an accident and you are being pulled into a machine, the e-stop is located wherever a right-handed person would instinctively reach as they were trying not to die. As a left-handed person, this means they are never located where I need them to be. This is a common enough issue that left-handed people are significantly more likely to die or suffer disabling injury in industrial accidents than right-handed people. Most safety features are just not designed for lefties. Most large power tools are not designed for lefties at all. Story 11. Surgical equipment. Surgical scissors, laparoscopic tools. It's the scissor problem, but X10. They lock, unlock with a thumb-pulling motion for righties, but an awkward thumb-pushing motion for lefties. The scissors need to be squeezed by a lefty to keep the blades together while you cut, and you operate on the opposite side as righties, which trips up the second surgeon in the room. Story 12. I struggle with directions, meaning if my wife tells me to turn left or right, I have to think about it. I think this is because growing up and playing sports, I always automatically converted the verbal instructions in my head. Example, throwing a ball. Raise your left arm to point and then throw with your right arm would become raise my right arm and throw with the left. Story 13. This is a weird one that I've never seen mentioned in these threads before, but it was just bugging me a few minutes ago. I often have to write things down on paper while sitting in a vehicle in the pre-dawn hour of the day. With no ambient light, I have to turn on the overhead light inside my truck, which is over the dashboard. So when I turn to my right in order to use my left hand to write on my paper against the top of the center console, my arm ends up casting a shadow on my paper, and I can hardly see what I'm writing. If I were using my right hand to write, my arm would be on the far side of the paper from the light, and I could actually see what I'm writing. Story 14. Not left-handed, but I had the strangest experience with this. I work a very physical job that is extremely niche. At any given moment, only about 40 people can perform one of the things we do. So, no, I can't say what it is without basically identifying myself. There is no training manual. There is learning by watching and slowly integrating. This was all well and good before the first left-handed coworker. I realized then that many physical training things are inherently designed around being right-handed. Story 15. Doors. You have a store with double doors, but they only unlock one side. Guess which one? The amount of times I'm on autopilot and damn near yanking my arm out of my socket because I dared to try and get into a business. Also shout out to President Obama, who at least made sure we're considered disabled to ensure we have appropriate access to tools at work, etc., and legal recourse when it is not made available. I worked in a framing shop, and while the lead was perfect beyond belief about making sure everything was safely accessible, I had several managers and a district manager who questioned the need for left-handed tools. Story 16. So many mugs that have a specific design. I got a really cute one that looked like my cat. Then I drink from it and get a cat ear up each nostril. Same with one of my water bottles. The straw is at the front when you hold it in your right hand, but at the back when you hold it left-handed. I always have to inspect my drinking vessels first and not get drawn in by cuteness. Story 17. Lefty here. I've learned to write with the book/paper/notebook completely sideways to avoid the dreaded ink palm in school, so it's never been an issue for me. I don't even think twice about how I suppose it looks strange to non-lefties until PPL bring it up in public. But being a lefty trying to eat at a table full of righties means I get to constantly elbow the person next to me as we eat our meals, LOL. So that's super annoying. Story 18. Radial arm saw. Used one at a friend's house. Left-handed, the sawdust blows in your face, and near the end of the cut, you can't see your fingers. Nope, that's all kinds of no good. Absolutely not. Tried using the tool right-handed, and it was all backwards to me. Usually not that particular about such things, but when it comes to power tools, I really prefer for things to be comfortable. Resolved to just not use that tool. Bad idea. Story 19. I've adapted to most things, but I dislike when things are pointlessly handed. I have several cooking utensils where the combination of a shaped handle and the shape of the utensil marks them as clearly meant to be held in the right hand. To use them in the left hand, I have to hold them in the less comfortable way because now the shape of the handle doesn't fit my hand. It bugs me because this shaping doesn't add anything, and making a symmetrical handle would probably be easier. It's like they went out of their way to annoy lefties. Story 20. I'm a pastry chef. We use portioners, which are ice cream scoops with the lever that pushes the bit of metal around to release ice cream, all the time, especially for things like cookie dough. They are meant to be used right-handed and don't fill or empty properly when done left-handed. So I have to do this weird double-handed thing and also break them more frequently. It's a weird and annoying specific thing, and they don't make them for lefties. Ugh. Also, I learned to use scissors right-handed in elementary school because it was easier than trying to find good left-handed scissors. The way the blades and hand pressure work with scissors means they usually only work right-handed. Story 21. All modern chainsaws are made for right-handed people. It was annoying at the start, but I learned pretty quickly. Martial arts drills can be frustrating when they are set up for two orthodox fighters. Either I match up with another left-handed or have to change my stance. Arm wrestling is nearly always the right hand. The mountain of firearms made for right-handed people. Story 22. Scissors. Never learned to use left-handed ones because they simply weren't available at school or in the stores. You had to either go to a specialist store, which means expensive, or to Germany. Now I'm stuck with right-handed ones as left-handed ones annoy me, which also means I can't use seam magnets, I'm a seamstress, on my scissors because they're in the way while cutting. Story 23. Spiral notebooks, binders, can openers. The list is endless. My least favorite was desks in high school and college only had right-handed extensions, so I'd have to reach over or keep the binder notebook almost hanging in the air or on my knees to take notes. I also have to turn rulers upside down, which makes it harder to read the numbers when I am measuring. The repeated questioning of why I turn my notebooks backwards or upside down to keep the spirals out of the way. My son is left-handed, and sometimes I am so jealous. He has so many left-handed things, and I had to learn how to do a lot of stuff right-handed because I was the only one in my family and of my friends who was left-handed. Teaching him how to write was so easy. Story 24. When I was in school, The desks, they were all made for righties. Now here's the thing you need to know about writing left-handed. If you try to write the same way as a right-handed person, your left arm hangs off the desk. You can't see what you've just written. You smudge the side of your left hand with ink. You are pushing rather than pulling the nib of the pen. So in order to avoid all that, you have to be a contortionist, curving your hand or the paper around or both in order to see what you're writing, pull the pen rather than push it, and not have ink smeared all over your paper. When I arrived to my first college classroom and found left-handed desks, it was like a revelation. Story 25. I broke my left arm in 3rd grade. Honestly, I don't know if it was true or if I was trying to get out of doing work, but I said I couldn't write with it and needed someone to write for me. My teacher said to just use my right hand and do my best. Fast forward to parent-teacher conferences, my teacher was pulling out some of my older work and was shocked at how terrible it looked compared to my recent work, until my mom reminded my teacher that she made me use my right hand, to which my teacher laughed and said, well, she got really good with her right. Story 26. Born in '68 and was faced with tough lefty, adapt. So adapt I did. Never think about this stuff. Don't have problems with stuff because I don't expect the world to change to help me. I just learned to do things my way and not left or right. More to worry about in this world other than if my wrapping paper was cut all ragged and... Story 27, left-handed person here. I can work with scissors by swapping hands or holding stuff at funny angles. I can write by tilting the page and curling my hand. Even the little lecture chairs with the folding tables are fine. I've never felt the need to seek left-handed gadgets. Martial arts drills using weapons against right-handers can be janky, but I got used to it. Most left-handed people end up somewhat ambidextrous through practice, and I found my right hand is able to do much more than most people's left hand. I play first-person shooters using a right-handed mouse setup, for example. I've never felt disadvantaged in any way, but if you sit me next to a right-handed person on the wrong side to write or eat food, we will bang elbows. Story 28. More of a flex, but so many right-handed people are amazed that I can cut a steak without needing to switch hands, lol. Also, back in the day I learned to use a vegetable peeler backwards, swiping towards me instead of away. Because back then, only one side of the peeler was sharp. I still do it. Story 29. Knives. I can't stand chopping veggies or meat. After 40 years and finally finding a lefty knife, it was worse because I was so used to doing left-handed. Measuring cups, oven mitts, those drive me nuts. Door handles, can openers, some musical instruments, etc. When playing sports, had to learn how to use a right-handed mitt, but we lefties have a slight advantage on sports due to the element of surprise. Back in the day, they didn't have lefty tools for us. Most still are designed for right-handed. The world was designed for them. Doors, elevators, clothing, tools, etc., but we manage fine. Many of my artist friends are lefties. In my college landscape design classes, most of us were left-handed. We have unique brain lateralization, hence having the advantage in sports, mainly boxing, tennis, and baseball at softball. We're ambidextrous in some cases. We also are more prone to injuries. Some notable lefties. There are so many more. Queen Elizabeth, Prince Charles, and William are all lefties. Leonardo da Vinci, Mozart, Babe Ruth, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Presidents Garfield, George Bush, Clinton, Obama, and Ford were lefties. Musicians Kurt Cobain, Phil Collins, David Byrne, Paul McCartney, Robert Plant, Paul Simon. The list of actors is long as well. Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt, Robert De Niro, Dan Aykroyd, Charlie Chaplin, and more. There's so many more. Scientists still can't figure out what makes us lefty-handed. There's a variant gene they've identified, but it still leaves many unanswered questions. Story 30. Nothing works for me. In kindergarten through about 4th grade, I had my hands slapped, head slapped, and got yelled at by the teacher for writing wrong with my left hand, or having trouble doing things in school. I ended up with a left-handed desk and left-handed scissors that didn't work because I didn't cut with my left hand. So in art class, I was the kid that couldn't make the curly Q construction paper projects. But I wrote with my left hand, so they never understood what was going on. And the teachers were not concerned at all about what was going on. Just that they had a requirement to turn out a bunch of kids that all did the same thing. The result was a confused set of dominant hands that was task-specific and a strong sense of performance anxiety about learning anything new that required motor skills, all which continues today. I wrote left-handed, cut with scissors with my right hand, caught left-handed, threw right-handed, shoot a rifle left-handed, shoot a pistol right-handed, jab left-handed, power punch right-handed, do most delicate tasks right-handed except for some things, and have difficulty learning any new task because of my experience in grade school. I can master anything, but I need to do it 1,000 times, then I am better than everyone else. Until then, people think I am slow. Then when I am the best, they get mad because they thought I was acting slow or trying to punk them or holding back. Story 31, chainsaws, blowers, and trimmers are all designed for right-handed people. The chainsaw grab bar is angled for righties, so lefties have to turn their hands awkwardly to cut wood. The engine heat from a string trimmer is shielded for righties, so my left arm is always burning hot. The blower sucks in your shirt if you try to use it left-handed. Compound bows, bow and arrow, feel like I'm holding them backwards. They make left-handed models now, but not so much 10, 15 years ago. Rifles eject hot metal casings at my face and arms. Any infield position in baseball except first base is off limits for lefties. Story 32. Most things are for right-handed people. Some things I adapt to without realizing. Some things I've made a conscious effort to adapt to. Others I've struggled with my whole life. For instance, I have to buy ambidextrous scissors. I cannot use right-handed scissors at all. When I learned to knit, I forced myself to learn standard continental. Took me a few months to get the hang of it, but now I can follow patterns and video tutorials without a problem. Mirroring everything is exhausting. Other things I learned unconsciously, like using a right-handed mouse. Story 33. I am a carpenter, just finished my apprenticeship in Germany, and I realized that a lid of the machinery just sucks when you are a left-hander. The buttons are always on the wrong side. Sometimes it is somehow possible to reach them with weird movements, but at some machines you have to turn the whole tool to reach the off button or something. In my opinion, it is sometimes even a severe safety issue that way, but I see that it is not logical for companies to buy specialized tools for lefties when they have maybe one employee that uses these tools. By the way, here in Germany it is really uncommon to work with your own tools, and the company buys almost everything, even protection glasses, shoes, and pants. Story 34. I got used to being left-handed / switching to right for a long time. Most of the time, I don't really find anything super inconvenient. Until I decided to buy myself fancy headphones for my 30th. Sony XMB4. It was newest model back then, and for me it was expensive fancy, and was super annoyed that touch panel is on the right side, so it was difficult for me to change song's volume, always going opposite direction than intended. So yeah, headphones. Story 35. Scissors. I'm more ambidextrous than anything. So sometimes I'll be holding something with my right hand and try to cut with my left, and it just like folds whatever it is over instead of cuts it. Then I'll be like stupid world and switch over. Other than that, I get by. I can write with either hand. Though my left looks better, it feels a little better to write right-handed. Everything else though, I'm a natural lefty. Story 36. I don't know how it is for everybody, but 2 of my kids, my wife and my niece and nephew, are all left-handed but can do pretty much everything with their right hand as well. They just prefer their left. I see my son writing right-handed, and he says it's easier and neater with his left hand, but he doesn't like the smudges, so he just does it right-handed. If I write with my left hand, it looks like a baboon wrote it with a stick. My grandfather was also left-handed and wrote with his right hand and said he always hated it, but he used to get beaten at school if he wrote left-handed, so he just learned to do it right-handed. Story 37. Playing cards. I could adjust to everything, scissors, knives, PC mouse, etc., but playing cards in some countries are only printed with symbols diagonally. Wasn't issue at home, all corners have symbols. So I developed hand technique the same way as any right-handed person. If I use that muscle memory, I end up with a handful of cards I have no idea what they are. Have to open them towards me and then rotate the whole hand 180 degrees. Story 38. Most can openers, scissors, taking turns cutting a loaf of bread roast with my husband. He always turns it all around, damn it. Other people attempting to teach me anything that requires your hands. Golf, baseball, guitar. They get confused. I tend to just tell them to do it their way, and I can make the switch to my left-handed ways. Story 39. When I write like a typical English reader left to right. If I use pen, pencil, or anything short of Sharpie, it's gonna smear. So I embraced the Sharpie for years and years. Did so many drawings with Sharpie when I could get away with it. I was a graphic design major in college and spent 17 years as a designer. Now I'm teaching design in high school, and they won't let the kids use Sharpies because they tend to disappear, and the ink magically reappears on the walls or bathroom stalls. I get it, but we're back to smearing. Story 40. A good chef's knife for lefties. I've been struggling to find a quality one for years, even by going into a specialty knife shop. I run into the same issue with scissors in that my view of the blade is obscured by the wrong side, so I have to chop and look over awkwardly. The knife store guy said, yeah, unfortunately, they're basically all like that, unless you want to pay $300 plus. Also, I'd like to reinforce the can opener thing. I had no idea how much I'd been struggling until I used a lefty one, and I almost cried at how big the difference was. And using a screwdriver for any purpose is extremely unfun. IDK if righties have the same problem. Edited for formatting. Story 41. The constant fight I have with game controllers and trying to make them work with games. Some games allow you to swap the sticks and most do not. Game devs can suck balls for this. Game reviews never mention anything about remapping buttons or the sticks so often I have to refund games. Some controllers, not all, allow you to remap. My Turtle Beach does, but doesn't support stick switching. There are a few games where I'm okay with using a keyboard, but as a lefty, that has its own set of challenges. Story 42. As a left-handed person, scissors are the bane of my existence. It's like they were designed specifically to mock me. The blades don't align properly when I use them with my left hand, so they just end up chewing the paper instead of cutting it. I've tried left-handed scissors before, but they're usually hard to find and honestly not that much better. Story 43, tin openers. Old style, left-handed ones, ambidextrous ones made for old people with arthritis or poor dexterity, just don't work. I don't understand. I understand they do work, but not for me. If my girlfriend isn't around to use it, or if it hasn't got a ring pull, I'm not getting in that tin without a hammer and a screwdriver and a set of pliers. I've done that more than once. Story 44. Aside from everything mentioned here, I dread the day I'll want to get a firearm, pistol or revolver, and we'll have to find firearm that can be used comfortably by lefties, especially if I want to get revolver for fun. I know some for lefties exist, but there can't be much of those available. Find holster for lefties, too. And exams, what if there won't be safety switch on both sides or I'll have to use right hand for any reason? Imagine failing an exam because you're left-handed. Story 45. In college many years ago, large lecture halls had those annoying seats with a right-handed writing surface attached. To try to accommodate the few lefties, there would be a couple with a left-handed attachment. Those were always in the very first row, far left or right side of the row. Story 46. I was working in a plastic fabrication plant, was being shown how to cut material on a bandsaw. So the manager was cutting with the bandsaw, and I was on the other side of it watching. Then when I went to do the cut, I did it as a mirror image, and it turned out backwards. So he told me I did the reverse of what I was supposed to do, but it was clear flat plastic, so I just flipped it over and said, "See, now it's the same pattern as you showed me." But he was really confused about what happened. I find the same thing happens with martial arts. If I'm standing in front of someone and they show me a right-hand dominant combination, for example, I'll flip it in my head and perform it in a mirror image with left hand leading, which will really mess up the instructor who's then defending, expecting me to lead with the right hand. I've gotten into arguments about this too. I'm doing exactly what you showed me. No, you're not. You've got it all ass backwards. LOL. Story 47. I don't think about stuff like that often. Everything works for me, but it may just not be super efficient. It's probably feel better to use left-handed things meant for me, but if I had to say, pencils and pens, having ink or graphite smeared on my hand all the time kind of suck. I know they had gloves for that, but I don't want to put a glove on just to write something. Story 48. I had trouble teaching my kids to tie their shoes. Crochet and/or knitting tutorials on YouTube. A lot of them are made using the right hand, and I just cannot figure it out. I turn my notebook 90 degrees and manage to write nicely, not get too many smudges, and pens work great for me, and do a lot of other things right-handed. Story 49. Not my problem, but my boyfriend once mentioned he doesn't like watching me cut things, veg meat, with a knife. He says it's weird and I'm doing it backwards. My mom got me a left-handed mug one time because I was drinking tea wrong. Also, I have 3 right-handed kids, so when my 4th was born, I experimented in that I always put everything in her left hand. Or when she started coloring/writing, I'd ask her to use her left hand. I wanted to see if I could make her a southpaw, which I'm pretty sure I did, although she's slightly ambidextrous, so I'm pretty sure she was supposed to be right-handed. Just doing my part to make more lefties in this world. Story 50. Every comment resonates with my experiences as a left-handed person, but also as a South Asian person. Something fun is that growing up, we only ate food with our right hand, so I've been conditioned to do that into adulthood too. But I can only use utensils effectively with my left hand. It makes for a really ergonomic, organized eating situation if I am eating multiple things with both my hands in a utensil, like a sandwich with a side of yogurt or something. IDK textures are a big thing for me, and I strongly dislike the texture of using a utensil with a messy, dirty hand, but somehow I'm able to completely avoid that with my situation, LOL. Story 51. If I were left-handed, I'd definitely be frustrated by things like scissors, pens, and even computer mice. It's wild how many everyday objects are designed with right-handed people in mind. For example, I'd be dealing with the constant battle of smudging ink when writing, and don't even get me started on can openers. It feels like they were made with zero thought for lefties. And kitchen tools, trying to use a right-handed knife or measuring cup would be such a hassle. Plus, I can imagine the struggle of trying to zip up a jacket with the zipper on the wrong side. It's just one of those little things that most people don't think about. Story 52. Guitars. Walk into a guitar store to see row upon row of beautiful right-handed guitars that you can't play. The left-handed section consists of 2 Strats and a Les Paul. Growing up in the 90s, it was so difficult to find a left-handed guitar that I didn't have to settle on. The internet has made this way better, but some guitar manufacturers don't make some models left-handed at all. Story 53, school writing desks. Much less of a deal for most adults, but a problem for every left-handed student. A lot of pens, particularly ballpoint, they want to be pulled across the paper, not pushed into it. For a lot of people, computer anything. Most modern computer mice are very right-handed, focused with the function buttons on the left side and often taking a shape to fit a right hand better. Yes, there are left-handed nice, but not always from names like Logitech and Glorious. You may also pay a premium for it. Modern games also often use WASD and the left side of the keyboard for most functions. Yes, you can remap the keys in most games, but for right-handed players, they can start a game immediately and enjoy it, while lefties may need to immediately dive into the settings to change the controls. Sports. A lot of sports are best played when everyone is right-handed, and most people are. Often, left-handed players either get a unique advantage in the right circumstances, or a massive disadvantage because they may have a weaker stance with that. Not to mention, every sport is taught right-handed. I'm lefty, but play basketball righty because my coach didn't know, and I didn't think to mention it. So I was taught and practiced right. A year later, he saw me sign my name and was confused when I was lefty. A lot of phone stuff is optimized for left-handed, although maybe not as big of a deal. I think a lot of people can figure it out. However, the point stands, you can't reverse the inputs on phone apps, like the send message button or options buttons, which are often on the right side. I see righties complain about the layout of phones. When Apple puts things on the left of the screen, I can't reach it. Imagine being lefty and 90% of your phone experience is like that. For a few people, manual vehicles. Can't find manual cars with the Euro layout, so you have to learn to use right-handed shifters. I found a lot of power tools, particularly saws, that have the safety switch on the right side of the handle, so you press it with your hand when using the saw. When trying to use it left-handed, your palm presses the lock the opposite direction, locking the drill, forcing me to have a weaker, looser grip, which is potentially dangerous. Basically, a lot of the stuff is just a learning system. But if it's always been that way, how much of it is a problem, really? I'm not sure. I've certainly gotten over a lot of it. I still find certain things every once in a while. I'm not in school anymore, so the desks issue doesn't bother me anymore. But I have issues with pens jamming constantly. I learned ASL in my sports right-handed, and it's just normal now. Story 54. I'm a sign artist for Trader Joe's, and we use Posca paint markers for our chalkboards. I have to map everything out in soapstone pencil, and then do the marker part backwards so I don't smear it. It's kind of annoying, but people are usually even more impressed with my work once they know that. And I get a nice little ego boost, LOL. Story 55. Gaming mice, or just any computer mouse, whether it's ambidextrous or dipped and confirmed to fit your hand comfortable, left-handed or right-handed, it doesn't matter. I don't know if it's just a ME thing from my left-handed perspective and if other lefties have this issue, but left clicking is the precedence and the natural logical feeling of clicking on things of importance that feels the most comfortable and reasonable is with your index finger. And the left click button is, well, in the left side of the mouse. You can switch it to be on the right, but that's insane and preposterous. So by the left click being the main and natural click that must be clicked with my main index finger, I do not hold the mouse like normal people. Right-handed people might hold the mouse and clasp it with one hand and can use 2 fingers to left-click with their index and right-click with their middle finger. I, on the other hand, do a claw-like grip with most of my hand hanging to the left of the mouse so I can position my index finger on the left click, with only my thumb clasped around the mouse. I alternate my index finger between left-clicking and right-clicking. No other fingers play a role in this. Ironically, the most comfortable gaming mice I have found in my years have all been right-handed mice because of this. And left-handed mouse, the dip makes my hand hang off to high up and it's harder to play. Ambidextrous mice feel too flat and I can't grip the mouse as easily because my left hand hangs and drags on the left. Could just be a ME thing. But I feel if there are lefties out there conforming to left-handed mice and gripping the mice and using 2 fingers, and maybe even using their middle finger to left-click might be traitors to us lefties. Story 56. Whiteout correction tape. For the longest time, I couldn't figure out why they wouldn't work properly and kept breaking pretty quickly for me. Then one day I realized that they work like ballpoint pens and are designed to be pulled instead of pushed across paper. When you're left-handed, you push across paper, so you're not using the whiteout the way it was intended. Story 57. It may seem a bit niche, but rifles are a good one. The hot casing ejects from the right side of a gun. This means if you fire lefty, The casing is ejecting into you and sometimes down your shirt. This makes for a pretty interesting dance while you attempt not to have hot metal burn you. Story 58. I hopped the turnstiles at MARTA once many years ago because I put my last bit of cash into buying the fare and put the coin or token into the left side rather than the right, so obviously my turnstile didn't turn. I was halfway to my destination when I realized what I did wrong. Christmas birthday cards will be backwards to the recipient. My dad pointed this one out. Edit. Backwards, as in how I put the card in the envelope. Also, as a kid, my one right-handed sibling, who funny enough has southpaw children, hated that I opened the cereal box the wrong way. I had to learn field hockey with a right-handed stick, as left-handed field hockey sticks are not a thing. Handled pots with a poor indentation are usually for right-handers. Measuring cups and most measuring devices, even my digital calipers and kitchen pen thermometer. In the early 90s, I called Logitech to ask why they didn't have any left-handed mouse devices. Computer mouse was new concept at the time. 35 years later, Logitech still sucks for lefties. You, Logitech, you north-pawed arseholes. I use a Wacom digital pen, and if it had a scroll wheel, it would be the perfect device. Microwaves, toaster ovens, and keyboards have their keypads on the right. There are tons more. Edit. Ooh. Voting was painfully right-handed oriented. Pens were short-chained to the right side for manual fill-in, and tablet stylus were also affixed to the right side. I first voted in pen and spoilt my ballot by smudging, and had to go back and they put me on the tablet, which was better because the paper ballot was so long and I couldn't get that stupid pen across the tiny desk. Story 59. A very obscure one for me is playing laser tag. For the places I've gone to, at least are meant to hold it with your right hand in the trigger and left hand on the barrel because that's where the cable that connects to the gun in the vest sits. So because I hold it the opposite, I have the cable dragged across the front of my body, which gets ends in the way moving around. Story 60. In my profession, needle drivers, hemostats, scissors, and even the rotation of the burr in the dental handpiece was designed for righties. Forward will drive the handpiece out of my hand rather than into it, so I use electric handpieces in reverse with diamond burrs rather than carbide often. But I also do a lot right-handed. I shoot and golf right-handed. I prefer to throw right-handed. If a surgery makes more sense to do right-handed, I will do it right-handed. Most things are designed for righties. Even the basic righty-tighty lefty-loosey is designed so you can use your larger supinator muscles to drive tighten for a righty versus smaller pronator muscles for a lefty. I've always just done what makes the most sense for each activity. Being able to write with my left hand while using a computer mouse with my right hand gave me an advantage on a lot of tests. Story 61. Lots of great comments here, but no one has mentioned the thing that I find most infuriating. My pen's coming apart in my purse. Someone mentioned the broom handle unscrewing. This is a similar issue. When writing with a clicky pen, the motion slowly unscrews the pen itself. If I don't remember to tighten it before tossing it in my purse, it inevitably comes apart and I have ink everywhere. Story 62. Tin can openers. In my first week of university, I broke 3 of them. I tried to open a tin of beans, and the opener broke. No biggie. I'll ask to borrow one. I borrowed one from a flatmate who I had literally met a day or so before, and broke hers. I brought her a replacement, but used it to open the still half-sealed can of beans, and I broke that too. I eventually found a type that I can use, but the introduction of ring pull cans has been a godsend. Story 63. Don't know if it was mentioned already, but chainsaws, if you pick it up with the left, the saw blade is next to your tight. If you pick it up the other way around, there's the motor between the blade and your thighs. Also, there's the chain brake that stops the chain from running when the saw moves towards your face. That doesn't work either, so it's a real safety hazard. Story 64. Back when I used to go shooting, some guns were supremely uncomfortable to shoot because the grip was designed for the right hand. Safety levers also generally were designed with the right-handed shooter in mind, though it seems now that more manufacturers are putting ambidextrous safeties on their guns. Oddly, left-handed guitars do not work for me at all. I had a left-handed guitar and I was never able to properly form chords or fret with my right hand, and I was unable to really strum or pick with my left. I picked up a right-handed guitar, and other than having to transfer SVLE memory to the opposite hands, no real problem playing other than I suck horribly. I can look at tabs or think what I want to play and it just flows naturally to my hands. Whereas with the left-handed guitar, I was constantly having to stop and think to transpose to the opposite hands. Story 65. Metro stations. I know sounds, but hear me out. You know those tourniquet in the metro station? So in London, you can just contactless with your card or phone, which is what I did. And the Metro calculates from entry and exit how much you pay. So obviously I go with me left so my door doesn't open. So the guy on my left is calling, "You dude, wrong door." I was like, "Left-handed, sorry." They were just continuous, not separated machines. Story 66. Not a big one, but I have seen no one mention it, but box cutters. They suck even if the blade stays out once you push the part that moves it up. You still have to do a weird switch with your hands and the blade is faced all wrong for you. The worst ones are the ones you are supposed to hold out with your thumb. Otherwise, the blade slots back in, so you have no choice but to cut right-handed. I begged my boss to order me a left-handed box cutter when I worked in retail because it slowed me down using right-handed ones. Finally just ordered one for myself online. Story 67. I haven't really faced any problems where I haven't been able to use something. Everything is more of an inconvenience, but nothing hinders me. I write with my left, but a lot of daily tasks are done with my right. I am ambidextrous with most daily things, except for writing. Writing is the only thing that I cannot do with my right. However, I do not have the classic left-handed smudge thing going on that most people do. I can write without smudging. Story 68. I'm ambidextrous because I'm left-handed. I had to learn almost everything, especially work related with my opposite hand. Then it just translated over. I do write left-handed though. I can write right-handed. It's just not great and takes too much effort. Things I can't use in my left hand for the life of me are fabric scissors, especially the ones with the edges that give a fabric a pattern. Impossible for me. Even in my right hand, can't cut a line to save my life. The Dremel. Can't get the angle right to save my life. Can't hold it properly in my right hand. Don't know how to explain it. Silverware. It took me forever as a child to master using a fork and a knife together. I always flung my food across the room while cutting because the knife fork was positioned on the wrong side for cutting, and the cut meat would just shoot for the plate. Mau. Story 69. I didn't notice until I was an adult how many things I can only do with my right hand because of how they were designed. I cut with my right hand, for instance. I'm not quite ambidextrous, but like a lot of lefties, we're way better with our right hand than righties are with their left. In college, you never knew what kind of seating arrangement you might get. Some lecture halls had a tiny right-handed desktop that folded up from the side and covered half your chair on the wrong side. I used a mouse with my right hand just because it kept me from having to switch everything around. Story 70. Most things in life. I'm sure people have their specific annoyances, but the entire world is laid out for right-handed people. Every pen, pair of scissors, desk, car, computer, instrument, and even a lot of cups are just uncomfortable to use for a lefty. Most of my entire life is either doing something mildly uncomfortable or having to learn it from scratch because it isn't designed for being left-handed. I've had to figure out a large portion of my life by myself because almost nobody can teach things backwards. Story 71. Cheap or loose scissors. The way you grip them left-handed parts the blades, so they fold the paper and tear it more than they cut. You end up doing this weird grip with your left hand to make them work correctly. Pull with your thumb and push with fingers while cutting. Or the ergonomic ones with the slanted handles. You basically can't put your left hand into the handles. Some wooden spoons have a subtle ergonomic handle that makes it nearly impossible to use left-handed. The gimmicky left-handed spoons work in the same way, but exaggerate the ergonomic handle. Basically anything that is one-handed and ergonomic is going to be a U to left-handers. Brooms, they naturally unscrew themselves. Cheap ballpoint pens. The ball dries out a lot for a left-hander. I don't know why. I pretty much exclusively get zebra pens because of it. Fountain pens. Most of them just don't work well for lefties. When I was in school, the chair and desk combos, you sit into them from the left side, and it has a built-in armrest for the right arm. Spiral notebooks. The front side of every page has the spiral rings digging into your forearm. Sure, the back side does the same for righties, but how often do you use the back side of a page compared to the front side? Manual can openers, or so I've heard from other lefties. I've never had an issue with these myself. Firearms. They eject shells to the right, so for anything you have to shove into your shoulder, them means a very hot shell casing uncomfortably close to your face as it goes by. Also, the grip on looking down the sights can be awkward at times. Anything bolt action is a juggle to cycle rounds. Gotta be mindful of the exhaust on handheld gas tools. I look for ones with the exhaust at the rear so I can avoid getting burnt all the time because I held the tool too close to my body and got hot exhaust up and down my side. Cursive writing. Ignoring smudging with writing in general, cursive just doesn't work very well with pushing. Definitely meant to be pulled across the page. Main reason fountain pens don't work so well either. I used to write in reverse in school. That always messed with my teachers when they would look over my shoulder. Haha. After each line it looked normal, just watching me do it was confusing to everyone watching. I can't do it anymore, sadly, and have it look normal. Who still writes stuff these days instead of typing it and printing, if a physical copy is required? In general, anything one-handed with a non-uniform handle or ergonomic handle is a good bet it will be odd for a left-hander to use. Driving in my country. Though personally I think it is great, Dominate hand stay in control of the wheel, and sloppy right hand deals with gear shifter, radio, AC, or whatever controls. Forceps. The locking mechanism is nigh impossible to release. I know there are a lot more, but I can't think of them. Just keep thinking of the stuff I listed already.